This talk started off a few years ago around, we were asked to do a talk on women in agile leadership. And that led us to do loads of research to figure out the problem is bigger than just figuring out women in agile leadership. It is about parity and it's about gender parity. So that's how this conversation started with one thing and now it's become something different. So that's what we're going to talk about. This is not about gender bashing. It is about understanding diversity and parity. So my name is Smalley. I am based in Atlanta, Georgia. And if you see my face is a little darkened because of not enough light, it's not because there's not enough light, it's because there's too much light. I have big windows here, so it's a little dark. It's bright and sunny today in Atlanta. And I am all those acronyms behind my name, a plethora of certifications, but I love to teach, I love to coach, I love to talk about topics that are very close to my heart, and this is one of them. Right? Kampala Consulting is my group. I've been part of the Agile community since the beginning of time. So if you need to know more about me, email me, pings me, we'll talk. That's my introduction. So why is this thing important to me? Why am I doing this stuff? Right? All of us have women in our lives, some shape or form, mothers, sisters, wives, daughters, whatever. And we've all heard this, that women leaders, we experience lots of crap around gender bias. There's been a lot of changes that have happened over the last, I don't know, 5 decades. However, here's a fact. None of us will see gender parity in our lifetimes. And nor will my daughters. That's what the Global Gender Gap Report of 2021 from the World Economic Forum tells us. Right? We will not see gender parity, not in my lifetime, not in my children's lifetime. But we need to keep working on that. And I do the work, this work that I do for these two. These are my daughters. I've experienced a lot of bias, a lot of uncomfortableness being a woman, being a person of color. I hope to leave the world a slightly better place for them. That's it. That's why I do the things I do. One of my favorite quotes about that is from Sheryl Sandberg. In the future, there will be no female leaders. They will be just leaders. What does it matter what type of person you are? You are a leader is a leader, right? Now, there's been lots of attention has been gathered with all the campaigns that are happening, but gender parity becomes a very statistical measure. People start talking about male to female, girl to boy ratios, but that's way more than, we need to focus on way more than that, right? If, for example, if there are equal number of boys and girls who complete primary education, for example, in a city, township, whatever, the gender parity for that is 1, right? So equal people went through primary education, gender parity is 1. The greater the difference between that, the lower the parity. So there is a big difference between equality and parity, which is equity. So the best way to describe the difference between this is this little image that I found, right? First image is focusing more on like equality. Let's everybody get equal representation. We want to give everybody the same thing, right? Which is great. That is step 1. But here it assumes that everybody will get the same benefit from the same support. Everybody is being treated equally. That's what we do now, equality. The second picture is what people believe we need to do to make it equitable. Because you have a person on the right who's shorter, maybe we give that person more so that everybody is above the barrier to watch. So this is equitably. But when you look at equity or parity, that's the third one. How do we remove the systemic barriers? I don't need anybody to give me or my daughters a handout. We are smart. We can get there. We will get there. I need the systemic barriers to be understood and removed so that they don't have to ask for a box to stand on. And they don't have to ask for 2 boxes just so it's equitable. How do we make it parity so that people can, every person who is from a different background can have the same fairness, same justice, and not just in, I'm giving you support, but also an opportunity. If you remove the barriers, I don't need the support because I'm going to get the same opportunity. All right. So I've done a lot of research into this, digging into the World Economic Forum. McKinsey and Company does a lot of research around women in the workplace, gender parity, gender gap, and leanin.org. So most of my stats are brought in from them. Right? So here's one of the quotes I really, really like from the Women in Workplace 2020. Actually, that should be 2021, typo. So a year and a half into the COVID-19 pandemic, so this was done late last year, women in corporate America are even more burnt out than they were last year. I think generally speaking, everybody is more burnt out, but women are more step ahead, and they're increasingly more so than men. Despite this, women leaders are stepping up to support DEI, diversity, well-being, mental health, but that work is not getting recognized because there's so much else happening in the world. Right? So this is important to understand, because if people start burning out, they'll stop showing up. So how do we ensure that the people who are doing this not only are getting recognized, but are getting the support that needs to be in place, systemic support, to make sure they're not the only one carrying this. So here are some facts on gender parity. And this, when I saw some of this data coming up, I was shocked and horrified. So this is why I've included this here. So 8 facts on gender parity. Before I go in here, so in 2020, the gender parity stood at 68.6%. Remember, 100 means equal opportunities. Men and women have gone through the same thing. So in 2020, we were at 68.6%. In 2021, it has dropped to 68%, right? And this gap is because of the decline in performance of large countries. The way it's going right now, global gender parity will be achieved in 135.6 years. Let me repeat that, 135.6 years. My great-grandchildren will be around when that happens. That should horrify everyone. So here's just some data. Women make up half the world's population, but they contribute only to 37% of the global GDP. If we could shift that, and if we could narrow the gender gap, $12 trillion will be added to the global GDP. That number is the size of Japan, Germany, and UK GDP combined. We don't need to remove the gender gap, narrowing it. That's it. And that number can be achieved by 2025 if we work on narrowing the gender gap. What's stopping us? 195 million fewer women than men are literate. We are lucky we live in North America where educational opportunities are not so tilted, right? But there are parts of the country where women are not provided an education. And this is a global problem. We cannot say we fixed it in my house, your house is your problem. This is a global issue. We need to all work on this. 190 million fewer women have access to an account at a banking institution. That means they do not have the ability to control their money. Women spend 3 times more hours on unpaid work at home. the traditional stereotype, right? Woman stays at home, man goes to work. My household is completely the opposite. My husband supports me as I have built my company and have created my career. If he wasn't around, I would not be where I am. My kids would probably, I don't know, never have visited a doctor in 5 years and have all the teeth fall out because there's nobody looking out for them because I'm traveling. He looks after the house, he looks after me, and he looks after the business. I couldn't have done what I did without him, but not every woman has that support. 90% of the CEOs in S&P 500 companies are promoted from line roles, right? So first level managers, but only 20% of women are promoted into line manager roles. So if 90% are taken from this group, but not enough women get in here, the problem is that we need to fix that, right? It will take over 100 years to reach gender parity at the C-suite, which is just blows my mind. Less than 50% of employees believe that their company is doing anything to improve diversity. These are just facts, and these have been collected over and over again. This data comes from the World Economic Forum, and over the past 5 years, the data has tweaked a bit, but not changed much. This is sad, right? This is why we do the things we do. So take a guess. Which country do you think has the smallest gender gap in the world? What would you guess?
I'd guess Sweden.
Sweden, yeah, okay. Other guesses? People.
Canada.
Canada, yeah. So Iceland, followed by Finland, Norway, New Zealand, Sweden, Namibia, Rwanda, Lithuania, Ireland, Switzerland. Wait a minute, where's the United States of America? Not in the top 10. 15th year in a row, the Global Gender Gap Report has been published. Iceland, always for the last, I think, 12th year running, Iceland is at the top. They have 89% parity. And the 5 most improved countries this year were countries like Lithuania, Serbia, Togo, UAE, not the United States. Even India did better. So I had colleagues from India saying, oh, do you want to come back? I'm like, well, my home is the US now. This is home. Yeah, India is just the country I was born in. So it becomes really hard. Right. Couple more pieces of data, then we'll get to some fun stuff. So this is representation in the corporate pipeline by gender and race. So you're looking at entry-level managers, senior VP, SVP, and so on, right? So what is the representation of people? White men, men of color, white women, women of color. Just, it's not that you feel the number of women in leadership has gone up. Like if you look at this, right? We went from 12% to 13% for white women in C-suites, but the change is not enough. It's just not enough. We are still underrepresented at every level. You are not going to fix this global problem until you fix it at all levels. And when you start looking at this, there was another data point I saw which said most C-suites in America, they're only 15% of companies in the United States that have more than 1/3 of the leadership team or the board of directors being women or people of color. The data points are shocking. One more piece of data. So this is, I don't know if you can see it, but this is just a different view of what we saw previously. It just says, if you look at it, the top part is women, men, the bottom part is men. just look at the number of boxes that you see in each. The representation is completely wonky. You have reasonable women representation, but then you bring in representation of women of color, that falls off even more when you compare it to all women, right? So let's look at some countries. So years to gender parity, right? This is very similar to what we talked about, which country had the highest. Now this is talking about how many years will it take to achieve gender parity in different regions of the world. So here you go. Western Europe, 54 years. Not in my lifetime. Maybe in my children. Latin America and the Caribbean, 59 years. South Asia, 71.5 years. Sub-Saharan Africa, 95 years. You notice the North American region is not even in the next 100 years. Eastern Europe and Central Asia, 107 years. The Middle East and North Africa in 140 years. And we are the last at 151 years in North America. I mean, and the number of years in North America actually stalled over the last 6 years, 7 years, drastically stalled as to how much parity there was happening in the country. So we are actually taking a step backwards and slowing down and not speeding it up. Right? So what is the problem here? We often talk about, and East Asia is 163 years, right? So we often talk about this word called the glass ceiling, right? Everybody's heard of it. Women need to break the glass ceiling. This is a term that's been around for about 4 to 5 decades, which talks about an invisible roof or ceiling that prevents women from rising up. That's not our problem. There are enough women who are breaking the glass ceiling. The problem is, let me rephrase that. There are women who are breaking the glass ceiling. The problem is there are not enough women breaking the glass ceiling. And the reason for that is something called the broken rung. If you don't step onto the first rung of the ladder, you're never going to get to the top of the ladder. The problem is that first level of management. We don't have enough women being promoted into that first level of management. We don't have enough women stepping out of the house. We don't have enough women saying, I don't need to stick with the stereotypical role definition. The minute we fix that broken rung and tell women it's okay to do what it is, and tell men it's okay to not be your typical role-defined stereotype, because it works both ways. That's when we'll fix the broken rung. You get enough women on the ladder, there'll be more people reaching the top. Or for every 100 men promoted, how many women do you think get promoted? Take a number, make a guess.
1.
It's not
Okay,
that bad. It's not
All right,
that bad.
we'll say 6. Sorry.
I don't know. I was just going to guess 10, right? At least
Yeah.
a minor percentage, hopefully.
So it's not that bad, right? So global data, when you look at global data, it's 86 women for every 100 men promoted to the first level. But then, because there are fewer women who get to the first level, fewer women get to the next level, fewer women get to the next level. I know I'm a certified Scrum trainer, and before the pandemic, part of my job was travel. I travel like a crazy person all around the country, sometimes globally, to teach and coach Scrum and Agile. A lot of women who I met would say, but how do you do that? Are you married? Yes, I am. Do you have kids? Yes, I do. Oh, then you mustn't be doing all the cooking. The hell I don't. My husband knows how to make burgers. I love cooking. We cooked together. I said, we managed, we figured it out, we found a way. People are now willing to look at opportunities, right? And this means that we all need to work together. I cannot solve this problem myself. I could never have gotten where I am alone. I needed my partner with me to help support me to figure out how we're going to do this. So how do we do this? What studies have shown is that companies have, there are 5 things that companies can do in order to fix this broken rung. And by fixing the first rung, you're going to fix the pipeline, which feeds into senior leadership roles, right? And this all comes from McKinsey and women, the McKinsey report, Women in Workplace. So 1, we need to set more goals for getting women into first level management. There's lots of goals out there that says we must have 40% of women in this level management. Great, you got goals, but we don't have a goal for saying we need to get the first level of management rung. We need a high enough goal there, right? We need to make sure, how do you not just keep a goal and keep it secret, publicize it. Ask for more people. When you're hiring, when you're promoting, this goal is what should be there so that we can come closer towards that parity, right? If you set this goal, the second thing you also need to do is requiring diverse slates for hiring and promotion. So if only 2 women are included in all the resumes, chances of one of them getting it are, but if you got 10 women in the group, great. The other thing for this also, I'm seeing more and more and doing more and more of this for some clients, is when resumes come in, we do not talk about the name, we hide the name, we hide the gender, behind any demographic information, so that when reviewers are looking at resumes, there is no bias. The number of times I've had people call me, or in an interview, they say, what is your name? And I say, Anupama Smalley. And they go, sorry, what was that again? Because my name is hard to pronounce, my full name, they don't want to call on me. So remove the names, remove the bias completely, and then you will get the best and the brightest. And that way you are giving equal opportunity for anyone to show up, and not because a name is easier or familiar. And that's where we get to. A lot of parity, gender parity, a part of that is to remove that bias that we have in our lives, right? We need to make sure we remove, we understand that every human being has bias. We all have unconscious biases. We have a brain, we have a bias, simple. But how do we understand, recognize what these biases are and the impact they are having? If a bias, some bias you have is not impacting anybody, anything at work, whatever, that's fine. But if we do have something, if we can put our interviewers, our evaluators through unconscious bias training, so they recognize their bias in the moment and can say, okay, I need to do something. I need to recuse myself, or whatever it is, right? And this unconscious bias training is not go watch a webinar and answer these 5 questions. That is not the kind of unconscious bias training I'm talking about. This is deep training where you get to actually acknowledge, these are my biases, and then what am I going to do with them? Not just saying, there are 10 types of unconscious biases in the world, blah, blah. No, that kind of training is useless. It's a waste of time and money for everyone. Make sure if your organization is doing unconscious bias training, there is actually actionable training, not just watch a webinar training. Establish clear criteria. What the processes you have in place need to ensure that people are going to be evaluated in the same way. So this is the where if you remove names and locations and genders and the year I graduated from high school, because that creates an age bias, right? Remove all that demographic information. So the evaluation criteria is, what do you do, and who are you, and what do you know? What have you done? What outcomes and impacts have you achieved? We're going to hire you based on that. At least open the door to you, first interview based on that. How do you make sure the systemic barriers have been lowered? I don't want to be interviewed because I was able to sneak in on a quota to interview immigrant women. I don't want that. Remove the bias, remove the systemic bias, so that I am going to be looked at on my own criteria, my own, what I have reputation, what I have worked so hard to achieve. All right. And it's really funny because I've gone into organizations where if I'm pairing with somebody, if it's a man and a woman, they automatically assume he's the lead. I had this instance, this was 2 years ago. I was doing a class for a private client. My husband travels with me. He handles all the setup. I do my flip charts, right? So he was in gym shorts and sneakers and a ball cap and is unpacking the boxes and setting up the table. I'm dressed in a suit. I'm on my flip chart up in the front of the room drawing flip charts. This gentleman walks in, looks at me, looks at him, walks straight to him and says, "Hi, I'm one of your students." I'm like, "Really?" And my husband's American. I'm like, "So because the white guy's there, he's the trainer? You don't see how he's dressed, how I'm dressed?" None of that actually landed. And my husband just looked at him and said, "Oh, I'm the help, she's the trainer." And that, how do you evaluate people without looking at the outward appearance? Right? And then finally, we need to figure out how to fix that broken rung. How do we encourage more women to get up there? That means you may need to ensure everybody's getting the same kind of training, same kind of coaching, same kind of mentoring. Do you have senior leaders in your organization who are willing to mentor women? Women mentoring women, men mentoring women. Some of my first few mentors on my Scrum certified trainer journey were men who recognize the fact that there are not enough women trainers in the Scrum community. So here's another number for you. Worldwide, globally, there are about, I don't know, what is it, 3 million certified Scrum Masters in the world, right? There's millions of them. There is a community in the Scrum Alliance world called the Guides community. This is the coaches and the trainers, certified coaches and trainers. Collectively, there are about 460 certified trainers and coaches worldwide. There are 200 out of the 460, there are about 290 CSTs in the world. There are 30 women CSTs. Out of 290, there are 30 CSTs. There are 6 people of color worldwide. And that's shocking. If you're going to transform the world of work, you need the Guides community to look like the world. Right? So how do we make that happen? So changing the numbers is not enough. We need to bring in that culture impact. We need to help companies understand that you've got to create a culture that will enable diversity, DEI, so that you can lead to parity. So look at your own teams, look at your own companies. What's the gender parity in your company? What's the gender parity on your teams? When even if you have a volunteer team, what's the gender parity there? What's the diversity parity there? There are multiple angles to look at this from. So we want to make sure there's equal opportunity, there's fairness, removing that systematic barrier. We need to make sure for everybody, work-life flexibility. My husband's company, when he used to work for a different company, if they had not provided him the flexibility to do what he needed to do, he would never have been able to support me. So the flexibility is not just for the women, it's also for the men who are supporting their women. I have many friends who are looking after their children because their wife is doing something else or the woman is doing something else, and so be it. The flexibility needs to be for everyone so that you can maintain a good family structure and support each other. And we need a safe, respectable place. I've had my share of comments that I get. I ignore most of them, but there are some that you can't ignore and some you want to kind of come out fighting. And yet, it's like it's in the workplace. I don't want to say anything. You don't want to upset the apple cart, so you keep quiet. I remember somebody once telling me, like when I was beginning up as a coach, I was coaching at a bank, and I was coaching different parts of the bank, and the person I was reporting into basically told me, we are not going to be able to get you to coach the leaders. I'm like, why not? He said, you're not a man. The leaders will refuse to be coached by a woman. I'm like, oh, okay. I left soon after. I said, if I'm not good enough to coach them, then I'm not coaching anyone. I've had people tell me, oh, you look so much better in a skirt. So do you? It's things like that, right? It's those microaggressions that actually prevent a lot of us from going anywhere. And this is not just women, right? This is microaggressions happen to every human being. And this is what stops us from doing the work we need to do. So here are some of the things that I believe we can, as part of the Agile community, we can step up and look at. Equal opportunity. How do you get all your team members to learn all different skills, creating those cross-functional teams so that we are ensuring that everybody has opportunities? Ask your team members, so what do you want to be when you're all grown up? You came in as a tester. Is that what you want to be? What do you want to do? Ask for them. Ask them to give their thoughts. If they've never thought of it, encourage them to think about what their future looks like so that you can provide them opportunities, right? Psychological safety. We want to foster an inclusive culture, a respectful culture. People come from different parts of the world. I've experienced and heard comments about different parts of the world. The number of times I've had people tell me, oh, you don't sound very Indian. What does that mean? It's just those things. I no longer feel safe. So how do you, as Agile leaders, as Scrum Masters, as product owners, as coaches, how do you ensure that in your team, start with your team, in your team, there is psychological safety for everyone, and we are not having any microaggressions allowed on the team. And if they are happening, call them out, right? Call out the microaggressions. Empower all team members to show up. This becomes so critical for us. When you hear people being shut down, encourage them to speak up, empower them to speak up. Just microaggressions will shut people down. Bias will shut people down. It's our job to say, I just saw somebody said this, I'm going to step in and encourage you to say something or do something. And if nobody is willing to do it, empower yourself. You step up. Be the role model that you're asking others to be. Coach people, mentor people. How can you help the growth of people? This is one of my passions, and this is how I know Ben. Coaching and mentoring to grow people to their potential, whatever their potential is. It's not for me to decide what you can and cannot do. My job is to help you look at that path and say, I can do anything. How do you do that for each and every person on your team? Even the people who you go, oh my God, that person's not going to do any good anytime. So for those of you who are coaches, we have this saying in the world of coaching, right? People are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. And we all have those people in our teams, in our world, where you go, oh, that person is a pain. And I will coach my leader, the leaders I'm coaching, to say, even when people are pain in the behinds, remember, they are pain in the behinds and they are naturally creative and resourceful. How do you manage that so that you're not bringing your own bias into how you can help? Make sure your senior leaders and managers are becoming champions of diversity. And I don't mean we have a DEI program at work and that the leaders have approved it. That means nothing. Are they actually engaged in DEI work? Are they championing the DEI work? Are they part of the program? Not just money. I don't need money, I need time. Because it's these senior leaders who can mentor people so that they can climb, they can grow, they can do better. And I tell this to everybody anytime. I don't need any handouts, give me time. You want to help people, go mentor somebody. Take time out of your day to figure out how to help somebody else. Right? This is important. The only experience, being the only one is still quite common. Right? I'm the only one woman on the team. I'm the studies have shown that 1 in 5 women often say that they're the only woman on the team or in the room or at work or in the meeting. Right? Senior level women in technical roles, 40% women say I'm the only. The only experience is really hard. Is really, really hard, because when you're the only, you have about your more than 80% on the receiving end of microaggressions, as compared to about 60% when there are more women in a group. Because when there are more women or more diversity, the only experience goes down and the microaggressions kind of lessen a bit. Right? A couple of years ago, I joined a leadership program. It was a 11-month leadership program with 4 in-person retreats, and I was super excited. This organization that was setting it up had touted it that they were a global company and da-da-da-da-da. I was super excited, saying, oh, I'm going to meet all kinds of people. I walk into the room on day 1. I am the only person of color in the room. And everybody kind of recognized that and did nothing. I don't need them to do anything, right? But they all went, hey, what do we do with her? Do we need to treat her differently? No, you don't. By just thinking that you're making me feel weird and awkward. There was one person I remember, retreat 4, she walked up and she said, I've been meaning to ask you for a whole freaking year. When I find I've had more instances where I see there's only one person who's different. What would you like me to do? And I'm like, just acknowledge I'm the only. That's all you need to do. She goes, what do you mean? I said, if you had walked up that day on day 1 and said, wow, does that feel weird to you that you're the only Indian woman in this group of 30 people? I would have said, yeah, no, not really. But then you've just created an ally for me to go talk to when I feel weird. But because nobody acknowledged it, I never felt I had an ally in the entire group the entire year, until the last time when everybody said, oh my God, I'm like, nobody asked. So just because there's an only doesn't mean you go, oh, we don't know what to do, so we'll just look the other way. No, don't look the other way. Acknowledge it. Because that will give that one person saying, oh, so you do see me. You see me. I'm different. And you see me. Got it. When I get really weirdly awkward, I'll come talk to you. Without that, you're not opening the doors for any conversations. So when you get really awkward, go talk to somebody. Don't shut down. Because if you're awkward, chances are the other person's as awkward, right? Flexible schedule, we've talked about this. We've got to give people more of the flexibility to do stuff, to figure out things, whether it's to support your family, or support your spouse, traveling, doing work. Empathy. All of this without empathy is lip service. Whether you are helping people, whether you are mentoring, coaching, becoming an ally, without empathy, it's just, I don't know, carrot and stick kind of thing, like short-term things. So if you don't feel empathy towards somebody, don't force it. Because if you're going to force it and fake it, I can feel it. Most women can feel it. When we get that, oh, the little fake thing, and you go, stop. I don't need you to do fake empathy. If you don't, just acknowledge it. Every human being respects honesty, as long as it's done with kindness, right? Allyship, this is so critical, and this is becoming more and more important in the virtual world. Because in person, we had the ability to go see people and hang out at the water cooler, go have lunch, tea, whatever. Virtually, all that has gone away. Allyship can make a huge difference in people's lives, people's experiences. Like I said, if somebody had talked to me on that day one of that leadership program, I would have had an ally for the rest of the program. And I felt a little bit more comfortable, right? People feel very awkward and uncomfortable wanting to become an ally. I've had many mentors in my life. The strongest mentors have been friends who are men, who've come in and said, tell me what I can do to help you. And I continue even today to have both men and women as mentors and mentees. Just because I'm a woman, it doesn't mean I'm only going to mentor women. If I can teach everyone to go mentor other people, whoever those people are, I'm creating a better world. So the International Women's Organization have the International Women's Day. The 2022 campaign is Break the Bias, right? So you go break the bias, but there was a quote on there that I want to read out to you. So, and this reminded me of John Lennon's Imagine, the song, right? Imagine a gender equal world, a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, a world that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. Together, we can forge equality. Collectively, we can all break the bias. This cannot be done by one person. This is why I will do this talk at any community, any company, any meetup, anytime, because the more people hear about it, the more people figure out what can I do here, the better we will be. So if you want to do a talk in your company and you want to do it yourself, I'll give you my content. You do the talk. You want me to compare with you to do the talk? I will do that. Remember those two faces I showed you at the beginning of the presentation? I'm sure you all have your own faces there, your own number of faces. Do it for them. For me, the best example of this is an example. The first prime minister to have dealt with a major terrorist attack, a deadly volcanic eruption, and a pandemic, all in her first term of office, while she had a baby and she was holding a baby, right? The Prime Minister of New Zealand. She can run a country while she can do all of this stuff. We can do anything. And she says the only reason she was able to do this was because her husband gave her 100% support. Remember, what can you do to help? How can you be of service? So, thank you very much for listening to me. And I don't know if anybody has questions. I'm going to stop sharing. If you have any questions, comments, I'm happy to, and I'm sorry to depress anybody on the numbers, but those stats are horrible, aren't they?
They are.
Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for having me. And if one of you walks away with this saying, I have one action that I'm going to take away and do something, it's a win.
Thank you for coming. It was nice.
Does
Thank you very
anybody
much.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? If not, I can start it out. I have one. How can we make this message more palatable for our male colleagues, right? How can we say, hey, we want to talk about gender parity, and to your point that you made in the beginning, it's not about bashing. Like, how can we set that conversation up ahead of time?
So when I've spoken to any of my male colleagues, I always start with, I need your help to change my world. I'm not asking you to change your world, because the minute I say I want you to change your world, people can get defensive. I say, I need your help to change my world. I want to share a story. So share a story. Chances are some of the microaggressions you've experienced, they don't even know what that feels like. When I've shared my stories with my colleagues, they go, really? Who did that? Oh my God, they get very angry for me. And when they get angry, I tell them, okay, now this anger, let's use it to do something better. Let's use it to build something. So how can we build it together? You don't have to solve the problem. You just have to get them to realize there is a problem. We all know there's a problem, because like I said, everybody on this call has women in their lives, mothers, wives, sisters, daughters, aunts, right, nieces. We all have heard something, but it doesn't become real until somebody sits us down and gives us an example. Like I had somebody who reached out to me, like this group I was talking about, where they were all non-colored, they were all white people. They were doing this meetings about, let's deal with racism because of all the stuff that's been happening in the last couple of years. They set up these calls for the entire group to meet. And then they reached out to me and said, hey, we'd like to pick your brain, given you're the only person of color in the group. I'm like, yeah, sure. And then we talked, and I gave them a simple example. I said, so you all go to Nordstrom to shop, right? And they go, oh, yeah. I said, so do you take a paper receipt or an email receipt? They said, oh, email. I believe in not cutting down my trees. I'm like, I take a paper receipt because I believe I want to live. They said, what do you mean? I said, if you and I walk out of Nordstrom, the person out at the door, better chances of them stopping me saying, hey, do you have a receipt, than you. And she went, seriously, that shit happens? I'm like, seriously, that shit happens. And she went, oh my God, will you talk to the rest of the group about this? And I said, I can't. They said, why not? I said, you pick times for a call when I'm not available. They're like, what do you mean? But you're the only person of color. I'm like, and you didn't bother to ask me if I was free at that time? And they went, oh my God. So people don't realize until you share experiences. I had somebody tell me, we've been told we should not ask our friends of color about their experiences. Yeah, don't be an ass about it. Don't go and say, hey, you're brown, tell me all the times you felt racism. Don't do that. And don't say, how can I support you? I don't need any support. I've been fine the last 54 years. I'll be fine for the next however long I'm alive, right? Ask to be my ally. I'm not looking for you to support me, to fix me. Be a friend. So it's about bringing awareness. Bring awareness. Your male colleagues will step up. I guarantee it, because they all have women in their lives. They don't know what you're experiencing. Share stories.
I like that. Thank you very much for sharing. Does anyone else have any questions?
It's a heavy topic for a Thursday afternoon.
I guess most of my experiences aren't ones that I even feel are work appropriate, even though they happened at work. I feel like they're really extreme to like share as an example.
Mm.
But
You
you know, it
you
feels
know what, Brittany, you're extreme. Maybe somebody else is normal.
I don't know. I mean, but if you're sharing it with people that have not experienced that, I feel like it sounds like you're trying to be, you know, or it's an inappropriate share, but it's like, but
Mm.
that's what happened, and it happened at work. So
Yeah. And I know what you're saying. There are times when, you know, I've had people say, do you want to share a story? I'm going, no, I do not want this to be about me. Stop asking me that thing. And it is weird. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable. I've always, when people say, can you share some stories about what you've experienced? My question back to them always is, why are you asking? What are you trying to do, right? And if you are trying to bring in more awareness, there has to be a reason why you're doing this, right? Do you observe something in your surroundings that goes, okay, that was a microaggression, I need to call it out somehow? So share a story around a microaggression. And I know what you mean. Sometimes the stories can be really like, that's not appropriate, but if it happened at work, and it should not have happened at work, then it needs to be talked about.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, heavy topic for sure.
Yeah,
It is.
you know,
Yeah.
that is really resonating with me in terms of like, you know, if it happened, because not, you know, I don't want to run to HR every time somebody, you know, says something to me, but I do like want to talk about it, but I just feel so awkward. So even just hearing that other people, you know, a lot of things are converging for me. You know, the creation of these, you know, women in tech groups, and you know, even just this topic, you know, how do we achieve gender parity in our Agile community, like that's even like something that we want to work towards. It makes me feel like more like comfortable talking about it, because it's like, well, yeah, like if we want this to happen, these are my experiences, and I do frequently feel like othered, you know. I just, you know, I sometimes I'm very acutely aware that I'm like the only brown woman who has
Yeah.
lots of kids, you know.
Yeah.
in
And you're
this
looking around going, wait, I am different. But here's the thing, Marcy, your difference is what makes you an amazing part of the group. The group is better because you're different.
Mhm.
Right? And the minute we keep remember that, that's how what is going to go forward. What I've experienced, I've never in the I've been doing this more work on diversity and gender parity for about 3 years now. It's small. I take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. I know that, right? It's a slow movement. But the more I do this, the more of you that come in and go, ooh, I'm going to do a story. So I've started doing things like diversity circles in organizations. So do a lunch and learn diversity circle where you bring people together. It can be Zoom, it could be in person, and say, we're going to share stories. Who has a story? And it doesn't have to be, you know, so-and-so was mean to me. It's not about that. It's not about who did something. How did you feel? Share that with the people in the group. The more stories that get out, the more awareness you will build, the less oh, I'm the only brown person in the room, we will feel, because people are going to recognize you and go, hey, there's Marcy. That's who we needed, because you are going to bring something that they recognize and they need. Our stories are what give our voices strengths. Our stories are what give us strengths. And the stories are what is going to get movement strengths. It's as simple as that. So don't stop telling your stories.
Yeah.
When it feels really weird, tell more stories.
I like that advice. All right. Well, we are over time by a few minutes. Thank you so much, Anu. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And like I said, if anybody is looking to, hey, can I pair with you to do something? I'll send you the slides I had. I'll email them over. Reach out, feel free. I would love to get more momentum on this. So thank you very much for having me here. Thank you very much for listening to a really heavy topic on Thursday afternoon. Everybody deserves a glass of wine after this.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Bye.